My name is Grace, and I am 29 years old. I am a teacher. I stand in front of 23 8-year-olds every single day, and I tell them they are capable and worthy and seen. I tell them this with complete conviction because I know, from the most personal possible experience, what it does to a child when nobody tells them that. Nobody told me. Not for a very long time. My biological mother's name is Linda. She is 47 years old now. I know this because I have looked her up, carefully, from a distance. The way you look at something you are not sure is safe to touch. She has a life somewhere in Ohio. A job. Possibly other children. I was not enough to make her stay. I was 3 years old when she left. I have no memory of her face, only the absence, which is its own kind of memory, the kind that lives in the body rather than the mind. The specific learned tension of a child who has been put down and not picked back up. The foster system received me at 3 and kept me until 18. 15 years, 7 placements, 7 different houses, 7 different sets of rules, 7 different versions of temporary that all ended the same way, with a social worker and a bag of my things and a car ride to somewhere new. I learned not to unpack properly. Not the clothes. I unpacked those because you had to. But the other things, the small things that meant something. The drawing I had made when I was 5 that I thought was beautiful. The book a kind teacher gave me when I was 7 that I read until the spine cracked. Those things stayed in the bag. Just in case. It was always just in case. I became a teacher because of Mrs. Patterson. She taught 4th grade at the 3rd school I attended, in the 3rd town I lived in, and she was, I understand now, with the perspective of someone who has become a teacher herself, not extraordinary. She was a good teacher, competent, caring, consistent. She showed up every day, and she noticed things, and she treated her students like their inner lives mattered. For a 9-year-old who had been in 3 foster placements and was learning not to unpack the things that meant something, competent and caring and consistent was extraordinary. She noticed I was a good reader. She gave me harder books. She wrote comments on my essays that were specific. Not good work, Grace, but I love the way you described the light in this paragraph. You made me see it. And I read those comments so many times the paper went soft at the folds. I kept them in the bag, just in case. When I moved to the next placement, the next town, the next school, I took the comments with me. Folded carefully in the front pocket of the bag where I kept the things that meant something. I became a teacher because I wanted to be someone's Mrs. Patterson. Because I understood, from the inside, what it meant to have one person notice you. Really notice, specifically, consistently, like your presence added something to the room rather than complicated it. I wanted to be that person for someone. I became that person. 23 8-year-olds, every year, each one of them worthy of being seen. The 6th placement was the one that almost broke me. I was 14. The family was not cruel. I want to say that clearly, because cruelty would have been something I could have named and reported and processed. They were simply indifferent. I was a check arriving on the 1st of the month, and a bed filled, and a box ticked. I moved through their house like furniture, present, unnoticed, neither welcomed nor unwelcomed. Just there. I had learned by 14 to make myself useful, to do dishes without being asked, to stay out of the way, to be quiet and contained and as little trouble as possible. I had a theory, developed across 5 placements, that if I could be useful enough and quiet enough and small enough, something would shift. Someone would notice not just my usefulness, but me, the actual me, underneath the quiet and the usefulness. Nobody noticed. I sat in my room in that house on a November evening, and I looked at Mrs. Patterson's comments, still in the bag, still folded, paper soft at the folds, and I thought, I'm 14 years old, and I've been nobody's person for 14 years. That was the lowest point. Not a dramatic lowest point, just a quiet one. The kind that settles over you slowly like fog, rather than hitting you all at once like weather. I folded the comments back up. I put them in the bag. I went downstairs and did the dishes without being asked. The 7th placement changed everything. I was 15. The social worker, a tired woman named Miss Chen, who had too many cases and not enough hours, drove me to a small house on a quiet street with a garden that was, even in February, clearly loved. Someone had planted things carefully. Someone had thought about what would come back in spring. Helen opened the door before we knocked. She was 63, small and sturdy with white hair and reading glasses pushed up on her forehead, and an expression that was not the careful professional warmth I had learned to recognize and distrust in foster placements. It was simply direct, like someone who had decided to see you clearly from the first moment and was not interested in performing anything. "You must be Grace," she said. "Yes," I said. "I've been expecting you," she said. "Come in." Thomas made soup. Not welcome, not the word I had heard at every placement, the word that had stopped meaning anything. Just, come in. Thomas made soup, as if my arrival was practical and expected and entirely fine. I came in. Thomas was in the kitchen, 67, large and quiet with a woodworking smell that reminded me of something I couldn't name. He looked up when I came in and said, "Sit down," in a voice that was not unkind, and pointed at a chair at the kitchen table. I sat down. He put soup in front of me. I ate it. Nobody required me to perform gratitude or warmth or the careful social behavior of a child who had learned to make herself acceptable. They just fed me and let the feeding be enough for that first evening. I did not unpack the things that meant something that night. But I thought about it. Helen had been a foster carer for 20 years. She had fostered 31 children before me. I learned this gradually, over weeks, as she mentioned them in passing, the way you mention people who have mattered. Not as a credential or a boast, just as her life. The children who had come through her house and left pieces of themselves and taken pieces of her with them. "Do you keep in touch with them?" I asked once. "With most of them," she said. "The ones who want to." "Do they want to?" I said. She looked at me over her reading glasses. "The ones who are doing well," she said, "usually do." I thought about that for a long time. I unpacked the things that meant something in March. 6 weeks after arriving. 6 weeks of soup and Thomas's woodworking smell and Helen's reading glasses and the garden coming back to life the way Helen had known it, wood, carefully planted. Things returning, as promised, in spring. I took Mrs. Patterson's comments out of the bag. I took the drawing I had made when I was 5. I took the book with the cracked spine. I put them on the shelf above my desk. Helen saw them the next morning when she came to call me for breakfast. She stood in the doorway and looked at the shelf and did not say anything for a moment. Then she said, "That drawing is beautiful." "I made it when I was 5, I said. "I can tell," she said. "You were paying attention even then." I pressed my lips together. "Breakfast," she said, and went back downstairs. I looked at the shelf for a moment, the things that meant something, finally out of the bag, finally on a surface that was not temporary. Then I went down for breakfast. I stayed with Helen and Thomas until I was 22. Not because the system required it, I aged out at 18, technically free and theoretically independent. But Helen had said, simply and without drama, that the room was mine as long as I needed it. That aging out of the system did not mean aging out of her house. I stayed. I went to university. The first in what I now understood was my family to do so, though family was a word I was still learning to apply. I studied education. I came home on weekends and helped Thomas in the garden, and sat with Helen in the evenings while she read and I marked papers, and the house was quiet in the specific warm way of a place that had been lived in well. I became a teacher. I got my own apartment at 22, small, with good light, near the school where I taught. I put Mrs. Patterson's comments on the shelf above my desk. I put the drawing beside them. I put the book with the cracked spine on the bookshelf where it belonged. I called Helen every Sunday. My biological mother contacted me when I was 26. A letter, forwarded through channels I had not known still existed. Careful handwriting on plain paper. She was sorry. She had not been well. She had thought about me. She wanted to know if I was okay. I sat with the letter for 3 weeks. Then I called Helen. "What do you want to do?" Helen said. "Not what should you do. What do you want?" "I don't know," I said. "That's allowed," she said. "You don't have to know yet." I thought about it for 3 more weeks, and then I wrote back. 1 page, careful and honest. I told her I was a teacher. I told her I was okay. I told her I had people who loved me, and a life that was mine, and a shelf with things that meant something, finally out of the bag. I told her I was not ready for more than that. Maybe, someday, maybe not. She wrote back once more. Said she understood. Said she was glad I was okay. I put her letter in a drawer. Not the bag, not hidden, not carried. Just stored, somewhere accessible, but not central. That felt right. I am 29 years old. I stand in front of 23 8-year-olds every day, and I tell them they are capable and worthy and seen. I write specific comments on their work. Not good job, but I love the way you described this. You made me see it, and I mean every word. I have Helen, who put soup in front of me in February and let the feeding be enough. Who said that drawing is beautiful and went back downstairs without requiring me to perform gratitude? Who told me the room was mine as long as I needed it and meant it for 7 years? I have Thomas, who smells of woodworking and says the true thing in the fewest possible words, and built me a bookshelf for my 21st birthday without being asked because he had noticed, over 6 years of living in the same house, that I had more books than surfaces. I have Michael, the principal of my school, who noticed my work before he noticed me and fell in love in that order, which I found entirely right. Who knows about the bag and the 7 placements and the things that meant something and loves me with the full knowledge of all of it. I have a life that is mine. Built slowly, imperfectly, from a garden in February and a bowl of soup, and a woman who opened the door before I knocked because she had been expecting me. I was 15 years old, and I had been nobody's person. And then I was Helen's. And everything that came after came from that. If you are watching this, and you grew up feeling like nobody's person, like the temporary child, the one nobody kept, the one who learned not to unpack the things that meant something just in case, I want to say something to you. You deserve to be kept. Not because you were useful, or quiet, or small enough, or good enough, just because you existed, just because you were a person. That was always enough. It was the people around you who were not enough, not you. Find your Helen. Find the person who opens the door before you knock, because they have been expecting you. Who puts soup in front of you and lets that be enough? Who says your room is yours as long as you need it and means it? And when you find them, unpack the things that meant something. Put them on the shelf. You are allowed to stay. If this story reached you, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Tell me where you are watching from. Tell me if you were also the temporary child. I read every comment. You deserve to be kept. You always did.